Alright, welcome back to Restore to Explore. Today, a bit of a different video. Gonna just give a bit of a rundown on a bit of a project that I'm working on. It's actually a jet ski. So this is a Kawasaki Ultra 1500, the 160 horsepower. So the Ultra LX, the Stx15f, Stx12f, all run the 1.5 naturally aspirated Kawasaki engine. And we had a bit of an engine failure. So I'm just gonna do a bit of a video just explaining what happened and how you can check this and rectify it. Buy a jet ski, they said. It'll be fun, they said. So, I'll give you a bit of a rundown what's gone on. So, we bought a jet ski, took it out first time. I compression tested it. Everything seemed pretty good. We got it pretty cheap. Me and a couple of mates bought it together. So we took it out first time, hydrolocked the engine, got it back. It had a crack in the exhaust manifold and water just came up the exhaust manifold through the exhaust valves into the cylinders, hydrolocked it. Didn't do any damage though. It filled while the engine was off. So because when it was running, the exhaust gases were pushing all of the water back out the exhaust, which was great. As soon as we turned it off and just let it sit in the water level was obviously higher than where the exhaust valves were. So the water pressure just kind of went up and it just filled over into the engine. And we went to start it and the starter motor just wouldn't turn it. We could hear it was locked, something was hitting. So because it didn't hydrolock while the engine was running at 5,000 RPM, the starter motor obviously wasn't strong enough to bend any valves or snap the timing chain or do anything like that, little baby starter motor. So we were pretty safe with that. We swapped the exhaust, did a bunch of work with that. So new exhaust, new manifold, did all that, new gaskets, got it all back together. Took it back out on the water, took it for a good rip. It was out for about 15 minutes, turned it off, went to start it again, and it was locked. And we thought, okay, maybe there's a crack in the head, something like that. It's still getting water in it and it's hydrolocked. So we brought it back, pulled the spark plugs out, expecting it to turn over, shoot all the water out through the spark plug holes, like happened the first time. And it was bone dry. So we knew something a little bit sinister was going on, tried to turn it over by hand, still wouldn't turn over. So anyway, we've got the engine all pulled apart now. I'll show you guys. I've actually cleaned this up quite a bit. I've already gone ahead and actually kind of fixed it. So you can see here, lots of damage on here. This is actually all been cleaned up. These are two new valves. This was one of the old valves. And that's what's left of the other one. And you can see the damage it did to the top of the piston. Straight through. Okay, so I had it all torn down and we've ordered some new parts. I'll actually show you guys the rest of the engine. I've got the rest of the engine here. The guides are fine, the timing chain's fine. Didn't jump timing. Pulled the bottom off. Oil pump's all good. The cylinder wall is a little bit scored. I've cleaned that up. It's in there. So reuse. Everything's been cleaned up. We're just waiting on new piston and rings. Why did it actually fail? Why did the valve get stuck and go through the piston? So I was kind of thinking, yep, okay, it's obviously had water in it. Maybe when it had the water in it the first time, it did slightly bend the valves and then it's got caught, but that didn't really make sense because I obviously compression tested it after we had the issue with the hydrolock and we got everything back together, and it had good compression. So, you know, that couldn't really be it. The valves couldn't have been bent. Anyway, dug in a bit deeper. With these two that I did replace, I put new valve guides in and have lapped the valves, so grinded them to the seats. They fit quite nicely now. But I've just figured out exactly what's gone wrong, so I'll show you. This is obviously the bent valve. And after I just cleaned it up a little bit, just with a filament wheel, there we go. We'll see all of this corrosion just inside where it sits in the valve guide, and there's a little lip there. And when it is all the way, when this valve is all the way back into the head, it actually sits here. So this little lip here, I can only imagine that when this engine's been sitting at some point for a long period of time, this valve was slightly open, just where it was rotated, and it was up to there, and just salty air that's inside the engine, because not being run consistently, not being flushed. If you just let them sit for a year or so, just the moisture and the salt that's in the aluminium, in the manifold, in the head, it actually still sits in there even if it's been flushed and through, and just corroded this little bit here. And you'll see that lip, and what's happened is this has tried to go back into the guide, and it's gotten caught on the lip, and it hasn't been able to go all the way back up. Pistons then come up, push the valve, bent it, or in the case of the other one, snapped it. So when I've seen this just now, I thought, okay, let me pull out some of the other valves. This here is another one. Not as bad, but exactly the same thing. Pitting, causing a lip. And with this one, this is from a completely different cylinder. I've taken the spring out obviously now. But if I hold pressure on this valve, as I push it in, I can actually force it to get stuck. Or at least I did. Where is it? I did have to kind of force it, but there we go. That's me pushing down and in, and there we go. It just went past that little lip, but that's kind of on the lip there. Oh, yeah, and then back in. So that one obviously wasn't as bad, and it would take a bit of sideways pressure, but when the lip gets a lot worse, you can imagine all it needs to do is just get pushed on a little angle as the spring's pulling it back in, I should say, and it gets stuck on that lip. The spring doesn't pull it back any further. Next thing you know, piston's coming up, bang. It's going to bend it a little bit, and then it'll just get worse and worse from there. So this here is a valve from a Kawasaki 310, so the supercharged version. They use a different high quality valve with a stronger, it's made out of Inconel. Maybe these factory ones are too, but anyway, it's just a much higher quality metal. This is a used valve, and you can see here, absolutely no pitting around that entry point there where it goes in and out of the bottom of the guide, compared to this bad one. This one here. And you'll see they're actually slightly different. They're a bit beefier down the bottom here. Thicker here. Bit more of a consistent radius as it comes out here. So this is what I had these from old 310 that I used to have, where the engine blew up on that. That's what I've put in here, which are those two. But I'm actually going to go ahead and change the rest of them. So I'm going to go pull them all out now and change them, because obviously this one is a lot worse, but you can see it's the start of what's happening here. So the bit about this that I found the most interesting is that you can't actually see that with the valves closed through the exhaust ports. So torch down into the exhaust ports here. Might be a bit hard to see on the video, but everything looks pretty smooth and good. Oh, that's one I've just taken out. Down in here, it all looks pretty good, but the bit that was actually corroded is the bit that just sits inside the top of the valve guide there. Which you can't see unless the valve is pushed slightly down, and that's where that corrosion was. So yeah, if you guys have had engine failure, you've had something like this happen, highly recommend checking to see if there's corrosion around there and just pulling all of the valves and replacing them. I'm also going to pull the intake side and check all of those as well. Got some valve grinding paste and my valve lapper, so I will go ahead and put all of those in, and then obviously it's all going to need to be reshimmed when it gets put back together. But I'm very confident now that that was the source of the issue the second time, because I was a bit up in the air of why did it happen so quickly after, and it was kind of just bad luck. If we didn't have it hydro-locked the first time, this would have caught us out fairly, at some point anyway. So yeah, It's been a bit of a expensive. We've literally used this jet ski for a total of about 20 minutes since we bought it. And we've got parts on back order from Japan, so it's going to be a while till we get to use it properly, but at least now we know we've got a jet ski that's had the whole engine gone through, and it should be reliable from here on out. All right, hope this was helpful to some people out there. Thanks again for watching. Please subscribe, click the like button down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.